Can I help you? I'm sort of busy here.
Video.
Oh, yeah, I don't think I have anything in the docket right now.
Video.
Okay, I thought we were moving away from this whole thing of just making videos just for the sake of making videos. Trying to make our content more worthwhile, stuff like that.
Video.
Okay, so like, I made a video on 2v8, right? Already covered that. Houndmaster's not out yet. I'll probably make a video when she comes out, but I'm not gonna make a video on her right now.
Video.
Okay, so like, what do you want me to do exactly? Do you want me to be like every other content creator and just make a tier list every time there's an interim between content?
Video.
Okay, fine. Video. Yeah, okay, you're getting your freaking video. Are you happy now?
Video.
Okay, first off, for those of you that missed Will in the last video, because he actually made 0 appearances, hi, how are you? Oh, there's a little rat toy. Secondly, originally I was going to make this tier list video to cover characters I like playing as, because like I've talked about playing times on the channel, I do favor killer, like 70-30, but as it turns out, I have not made a fun to face tier list in 3 years. In 3 whole years. So it's been a while since I've made that. It's a little out of date, don't you think? So I opted to do that instead. If you want to see me still do the fun to play as killer tier list, do let me know down in the comments below, and I will make that video as well. But I realized that my last video on fun to face is a little outdated. So let's go down each of the categories right quick. S is my favorite, so people actually look forward to facing when I'm playing Survivor. A is a good time, like if I get this killer, like typically I'm gonna have an all right time. Sometimes there's some outliers, but typically I enjoy facing them. B is okay, like I'm not gonna complain, but I'm not really having a great time either. It's kind of just meh, very meh. C is rather somebody else. Like I am actively going, man, the person I got, the killer character that I got, I would rather be facing another killer, and I'm actively thinking it the entire time I'm playing. And then all the way down in D, we have actively dislike characters I don't look forward to seeing, and if I was a lesser man, I'd be leaving those matches because, man, I typically do not enjoy them. Oh, by the way, all of this is subjective. None of this is based off of any sort of like objectivity or, hey, this is the way it is and you got to deal with it. No, this is all just subjective. This is how I feel. This is how I enjoy or dislike the killers I go against. This is my personal takes. Okay. So argue with the wall if you hate me about it, because like, I'm not telling you how to feel. I'm just saying how I feel. All right. So let's start with the main man, the original, the OG Trapper. Trapper's okay. Trapper's okay. If you're playing like a normal Trapper whose whole thing is like, I'm trying to trap at loops and bushes and random places that you perhaps would not see coming, it's pretty all right. It's okay. But like, you also got to you always run the risk of running into a Trapper that's a basement Trapper. That's exclusively their whole deal is put somebody in a basement, trap a basement, and then prevent people from getting in. And that kind of Trapper, that Trapper is miserable. So he kind of goes to this like, okay, like if he doesn't do that specific play style, he's pretty all right. He's pretty fine. If he did not have access to doing the whole like trap that basement play style, he'd probably be in good time. But because there's that possibility that happened, he sinks down into okay. Because when that happens, man, is that miserable. Wraith, it goes into rather someone else, but it's for a strange reason. Wraith, as a character themselves, typically isn't too troublesome or annoying. But for whatever reason, like the Wraith player base plays as if there's like a Wendy's gift card on the line and they got to win it at all costs because that's their only meal they're going to eat for the day. Like, I don't know what happened to Wraith players that made them so angry and so upset and so sweaty, but like there was a shift where they all became like super sweaty nerds, and I don't know when that happened. I think realistically, if I'm, keeping the jokes aside, I think it's because he has a relatively low skill ceiling despite being a fairly good B tier killer. So there's a situation there happening where people think they're good and they're not. So they like to kind of like go hard and gloat about it when realistically the amount of effort they're putting in is not really that crazy. So I think that attracts a certain intense player base. So Wraith, fine. If Wraith had like a normal player base, probably would be okay, probably be above Trapper. But because the player base likes to go extremely hard, he sinks down into I'd rather see somebody else. You having a good time? Whoa. Billy's a good time. Billy used to be like up here in S tier and like favorites to face. Although his rework buff, his overdrive buff was really strong. So it does feel like a lot of the time there's like not too much I can do in a lot of situations against this character, but he still retains his core values. The family show. He still retains his core kit where, you know, it's all about predicting the curve, avoiding the curve, trying to avoid the chainsaw, forcing him to M1. He still has the basic same like gameplay loop that he's always had, except now he has this extra overdrive factor that just makes him really good out of nowhere. And you got to like play that loop suddenly very differently, which can still be very exciting. But as well, this is kind of like also play style based, because there's some Billies who just exclusively come back to hook and insta down and force trades all the time, and he's essentially like camping hook from like cross map. So, you know, like it just kind of depends on the player you get, but typically Billy is a good time. Nurse, I want to put Nurse in like okay, because like here's the deal. This might shock people because Nurse is like the strongest character in the game. There's like almost no counterplay. At least Nurse games are quick. There's some other people we'll cover on this list who are really strong, who have really long excruciating matches. That's not Nurse. If a Nurse is good in your game, the game ends rather quickly. So at least you got that going. And also, when you get a mediocre or bad Nurse, looping them is actually extremely fun, because they don't just automatically guess everything you're doing right away, and you actually get to loop a little, which is really fun. Like trying to trick her is actually really entertaining. So at worst, your games are at least quick, and at best, you actually get some pretty fun loops. If she wasn't so boring when played well, she'd probably make it out of okay up into good time. But because when she's played right, there's literally just nothing you can do. Yeah, she's gonna sit very firmly in okay. Matter of fact, okay is probably kind of generous, but hey. Myers, recently with the PTB update, Myers is actually gonna go up probably to okay for now, because it's not live yet. Man, you really yeeted that thing. Really yeeted, little rat demon. Holy moly. But Myers with this recent PTB changes, like the main thing about Myers that sucked was Tombstone, right? And you seeing Myers, you can kind of argue that like the whole thing of like, oh well, he just 99s his tier 3 and then pops on you and there's no counterplay. I'm like, look at most of the characters down here. Like there's a lot of characters that have much worse instances of zero counterplay. That is relatively tame, all things considered. So the main pain point was Tombstone piece and Tombstone itself, which have received some pretty sizable changes to make it to where you're not really getting them until like later in the game. So they are still in the game, but they take longer to get. So that is made significantly better. I know some people have been saying that that's not the case, but like I ran Tombstone during the PTB and I wasn't able to get it until like one gen a lot of the time. So once again, this is based on PTB changes that may change. Or people may figure out things, ways to cheese the balance. But as of right now, they kind of tried to lean more into Myers stock and tier 3 kit and not so much the Instamori part while still retaining it. And that was kind of the main pain point. So he just kind of goes up into okay. They probably go higher, but like I said, I'm kind of basing these on a PTB version of the character that's not currently out yet. So we'll have to see how that dust settles. But right now, my projections are that's going to be pretty okay to face Myers, which is a relief. Hag, I don't like playing as Hag. I don't like playing against Hag. Even though she's been changed and nerfed in ways that make her more interactive, I just don't care for this character. Like, I get her place in the game as kind of like the anti-meta, because the meta of DBD is end chases quickly, patrol gens, which she does the opposite. She hits and runs, leaves chases, and only patrols one tiny area. she doesn't go everywhere else. So she's the anti-meta character. There's an anti-meta in every game that has any sort of versus component. There's always the character that's like, what if I don't do the things everybody else does? And I do the opposite. And that's the meta. But like, it's just not interesting. It's just not fun to play as. It's not fun to play against. Like, camping is already such a uninteresting thing in Dead by Daylight, so much so that they actively removed base camping, because even the devs knew, like, hey, this hurts the health of our game. So having a character entirely built around it and being able to camp from like really far away is just like really, it's just not a good time. And even when you run into like Chase Hag just runs shackles and just body blocks resources so you can't use them and then mows you down. Like, I guess the only thing you can say, and this is not this tier list, but like at least Chase Hag is fun to play as, you know. But like, I don't remember the last time I had a good, like a fun hack game ever, if I'm being so for real. Dr. Shocker. He's okay. I'll put him above Nurse. It's like Doctor's not particularly a strong character, and his counterplay is pretty like cut and dry. So as long as you know how to play against a Doctor, he's a pretty good time. He's like an M1 killer with some anti-loop, but anti-loop, like I said, that has counterplay there. Either you can drop the pallet early, you can try to juke the shock. There's a lot you can do against Doctor. Also, the Doctor kind of like appeals to a very much like emerging player kind of player base. Usually people don't stick with Doctor too long, so usually the killers you're facing while playing Doctor are people that are emerging as killers, so you typically don't get like absolute demons on Doctor when you run into them just out in the wild. So even if they're trying to super sweat and try hard, they typically only goes so far. The only thing that kind of sucks about Doctor that I feel like almost puts him and rather would see somebody else is there are those Doctors that run those like infinite skill check builds, and those could get pretty frustrating, especially for me who streams, because I'm trying to like talk and interact with my chat and I can't because I got to focus on the tiny skill chat known to man. But otherwise I don't really think there's much to complain about with Doctor, to be honest. Huntress, she used to be someone who I had an S tier, because when a Huntress has good ping, she's actually pretty fun. And I think that a lot of this comes from the fact that I've mained the character before, so I kind of know what to do, so I know what to look for when I play Survivor to dodge, and that can be a good time. Obviously the problem is her hitbox behaves very, very poorly under lag, and it's not even intense lag, it's even slight lag. The slightest lag, if you're like at like 80 60 ping, like something, your hatchets aren't hitting where they quite should. It's really bad. It's always been that way. Obviously another component of this is the Huntress, where she just holds her hatchet, and like honestly, the more I talk about, I haven't said positive things yet. I think she goes into the top of okay, because what I'm getting to here is that they recently buffed her to have even more hatchets, so she can be even less accurate with her hatchets, and she can zone way more often, which are two things that like are frustrating to play against. Overall, this is really sad because, like I said, she used to be up in favorites. Like a good ping Huntress with 5 hatchet Huntress was actually a pretty good time for me. But like just with like the 7 hatchets and like the constant zoning and the availability to do that more now that she has more hatchets, it's just like, it's so not great. It's just so not great. Like this was a character that didn't need a buff and got one anyways, and I'm just confused. So I don't really enjoy getting her that much anymore. This is also in the middle of 2v8, so take this with a grain of salt. I may have some negativity bias going on right now because Huntress is like in every game of 2v8. Bubba, I know people are like, S tier Bubba's amazing, blah blah blah. I watch every Survivor main content creator and they all love Bubba. I'm okay with Bubba. I think that's where where do I put him here? I'm gonna put him like right here. I like facing Bubba more than Huntress. Bubba's just okay. This used to be lower because of face camp Bubba, but now he has to proxy if he wants to do that. I think Bubba can be fun, but I feel like the main hang up for me that keeps him out of like the higher tiers in terms of fun is that it requires a lot of just like chucking pallets, especially now since he bumps and he doesn't really get like too horrendously punished for bumping, which is a good thing. I will say that. That was one of the most frustrating aspects of playing as Bubba. So having that be adjusted is nice. But from the Survivor counterplay standpoint, like a lot of what you used to do was like try to force Bubba to bump by hugging an object too tightly, and that was part of his counterplay. But that's just kind of like been like eased out a great deal for the sake of quality of life for the character, which I still appreciate. But just from a counterplay perspective, it really feels like I'm just like chucking pallets a lot, and it's very like 2D. Like the counterplay is very two-dimensional. Honestly, I feel like a lot of people just like facing Bubba because he's a relatively unremarkable character. He doesn't have map mobility. All he has is this insta down, but he, like, as long as you throw a pallet or have a pallet nearby, you have a defense against it. Like, I feel like content creators, Survivor main content creators, like facing Bubba because he's pretty easy and pretty easy to bully as a result. I think that's why they're like, oh my gosh, Bubba S tier. And I think he does go at the top of okay, because the Bubbas that are actually good, that are actually cracked, are actually really cracked. And I do appreciate them a lot. Fredward Krueger. This is the most like meh pick. Like, I almost want to put him in rather somebody else just because of the fact that it's just like such an uninteresting game when it happens. I think I'll put him here behind Doctor because he's not a bad time. It's just like nothing fun happens. Like the most exciting thing that happens in a Freddy game is like, oh, they have fake pallets, and then you throw a fake pallet and you're like, whoa. But that's like a singular time thing that happens once and you're like, oh yeah, it's fake pallets, and then that's it, right? So like he's just like a lack of gameplay. He is a vacuum of gameplay. I hope whatever they do in January really not only makes him fun to play as, but also makes him fun to play against, because I feel like when I'm playing against them in Survivor, there's just like nothing going on. There's just like nothing is happening. You are just M1 killer with some slight map mobility and some slight adjustments. Like that's it. So it's just kind of like a nothing burger. Pig. This is going to be a weird one too. I think I'm just going to put Pig in rather someone else for almost the exact same reason that I do that with Wraith. Pig themselves as a character, not really a problem. It's the way that the player base of pigs play them. We call them angry bacon. We call them the angry bacon pig maids. Is like I don't know what it is. I'm sure you've seen it if you've been on DVD social media like Twitter or something. That like for some reason the pig player base is like really intense, really mean. I don't know if it's like that archetypical like kind of like thing that's in every game that's like has any sort of strength and versus component to it, where it's like I'm playing a low tier, so I have to super compensate, even though nobody's forcing you to play that low tier. But like pigmains are really nasty. Like they'll do the follow you down tunnel strat to make your head pop. They'll do the scream build to try to knock you off constantly, solving your hats. I feel like if I'm looking at anybody on this list, and we'll get to some of these, like this is probably a top 3, top 5 tunneling character that I see. Like if I'm getting tunneled, like I would put Pig in top 5, top 3 as a guess to who's tunneling you, because I get tunneled by pigs a lot. Pig the character, not too offensive, but their player base is just so intense. They take this game far too seriously. Clown. Honestly, this hurts me to put Clown there because like Clown I enjoy. Clown is one of my favorite M1 killers in the game. Something about putting yellow bottle there, purple bottle here, and trying to like figure out the efficiency of that to just barely get the hit before the pallet or window. It tickles my brain. It makes me happy. But on the Survivor end, it really is just kind of like pre-running and pre-throwing. that is the Clown game. Is he just mows down pallets and eventually gets you, and you just have to like precautionarily do things way too early compared to other killers, and it's just like not interesting. Like to me, it's just so milquetoast. Like it's just, I feel like every Clown game is just going through the motions. I can't remember the last time a Clown did something and I was like, whoa, in the middle of like facing them in a Survivor match. Like it's just very wash, rinse, repeat, and what you're doing is just not very interesting either. So it's just like, I don't know. Spirit, honestly, rather somebody else. Spirit has been changed a lot over the years to make her less frustrating, but honestly, especially if the Spirit is even slightly good, Spirits can be super frustrating. Super duper frustrating. And once again, kind of like other characters that are in the same category, the Spirit player base that main her are typically very, very intense, very, very sweaty individuals. You know the kinds. the schoolgirl spirits, the Yamaoka kind of like Oni skin that she has. If you see those, you better run for the hills, because those are the gamers. Like they sweat Mountain Dew and their chair is made out of Dorito crumbs. Like they are the worst people to face in this game, because they go on to pubs and they pub stop and they feel good because they're playing a top 5 character. It's the Spirit mains take this game far too seriously. So like that on top of her kit being one of the best in the game, so even if she's not sweating, it's a very rough kit to try and counteract. Like she's just intense, and I just would rather face somebody else. Literally the name of the category, I would just rather face somebody else. Legion, I'm not like a huge Legion hater, but I'd still rather face somebody else. And this is gonna come as no surprise. This is probably gonna be a short section. You know, mending simulator. It's a tale as old as time, you know, like every single person, whether they're a killer main just hopping on Survivor or Survivor main, just holding M1 to mend all the time is just like, it's just boring. It's just like constant timeouts from gameplay over and over and over and over and over and over. In addition to this, the deep wounds screen gets pretty dark sometimes, and it makes it really, really hard to loop if the Legion's actively chasing you, and your men's screen is getting darker and darker and darker, and it gets really hard to see. Am I the only person, by the way? This is an issue I have with deep wounds that I'm trying to like weigh in with other people. Sometimes when I'm looping, and Deep Wound starts to get darker and darker, the red blood gets brighter, and sometimes it looks like the red stain, and I get like really confused, especially at like taller loops. Does anybody else have that issue? Anyways, Deep Wounds is going to be slated to be adjusted soon, so hopefully they deal with like the visibility and disorientation issues with that. I really hope that's what they're doing, because especially with Legion, that's kind of what makes them not my favorite. Plague, once again. I should have just named this category. This killer theoretically is fine, but man, their player base is intense, because Plague is the exact same way as like the rest of these, where like Plague in theory not too bad of a time, but man, I don't know who hurt you Plague mains, but you play this game like it's your last day on this earth, and you always do. I don't know why. I can't remember the last time I had a chill Plague game. I think I had one chill Plague game this year, and it was because they were clearly just like doing the daily and they were bad. Like every other Plague game I've ever had has been excruciating, because they take the game so intensely. Like they are ride or die for DBD, and they will do anything to get that 4K. It's 4K or no K for Plagues. Like it is, I don't get it. That on top of the kit just completely denying any sort of altruism. Like if you were running a healing build, good luck, brother. You're SOL. Like I think that compounds into a pretty unfun situation. Honestly, I think I'm gonna place her lower. Yeah, she's probably at the bottom of this. Like I see Plague and I'm like, oh brother. Like she's almost an actively dislike if it weren't for specifically the player base aspect. Like she stays up here, because I don't feel like I can fully judge a character based on their player base. It is a factor, but like I feel like it'd be unfair to be like, well, her player base sucks, so she's in D tier. You know, it's like that is a factor, but I don't think it should be a heavily weighted factor, if that makes sense. Ghostface, it's okay. I'll put him above Freddy. Ghostface is okay. Like Ghostface is a pretty weak character. He's like a bottom 5, bottom 10 character in the game. The main frustrations with Ghostface come down to the fact that his reveal mechanic is just like wonky. If you didn't know, instead of being at the center of the screen, the reveal mechanic is actually in the top left of the screen for some reason. Here, let me show you my cursor. Like if you're like, this is like the center of the screen, right? Like right about here. If you're trying to reveal Ghostface, you don't look here, you look like up here for some reason. I don't know why. It's kind of just always been that way. It's really weird. But like it's just kind of like really frustrating to try and like account for that mid-game. It's really difficult. The good thing though is like Ghostface is a very like simple power, so looping him is essentially just an M1 killer with extra steps. So you get to like really show off your looping skills, as long as you're not 99, of course. So that's why he goes in okay, because like besides the bad reveal mechanic, everything else is fine. Like it's okay. I'd rather face him than a Freddy or a Nurse, but so that's not saying much. Demogorgon, a lot of people hate Demo now, and I don't get it. Like I truly don't. Like Demo's typically a good time. I get that the shred can zone you, but like so can a lot of killers in the game. And honestly, the demos that don't just giga zone, like dodging that shred is actually extremely fun. I like trying to look out for the portals as well. Like I typically have a good time when I face demos. I don't know. It's just if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I truly don't get like the Twitter hate that Demo gets, and I think that just I don't know. I feel like DBD Twitter just kind of like gets bored every once in a while, just picks something to get pissy and annoyed about. And I think Demo just got too many stray bullets from the board community. Oni-chan. Oni's pretty cool. I think a laggy Oni is terrible. I'll put him above Demo. I think a laggy Oni is pretty bad, but laggy character in general is typically not a good time. His counterplay is pretty clear cut. You know, play really safe early on to deny him his power. Dodging the blood rush, that is something else entirely. Dodging his blood fury is actually really exhilarating and really exciting. There's a few things that give me adrenaline in this game, not the perk. Just barely ducking out of the way of a giant freight train of angry man flying by you and just missing by a smidge. That feels good. That feels exciting, and it feels exhilarating. And it's not something that I get a lot playing Dead by Daylight, especially at 7,000 plus hours. I kind of just going through the motions a lot of the time. Especially on Survivor, the less interesting role. So like being able to go and then legitimately feel it, not be faking it. Oni does that to me all the time. I will say that a really, really good Oni that's like doing like the 180 flick stuff is like kind of boring, because like how do you dodge something that you don't even know is coming your way? Like the guy's just facing the wrong direction and just suddenly just appears on you. Just like, I'm like, okay, whatever, dude. And by the way, that's not like, people are always like, but that's skillful. It's like the Blight hug tech thing. It's like people are like, bro, it's so hard to do, and then you actually try to do it yourself and you're like, oh, I guess that wasn't true. So that's kind of like the only downsides to Tony. Otherwise, it's a really good time. Deathslinger is one of my favorites. Deathslinger is a really, really good time. There's nothing that feels, speaking of that exhilaration feeling, I feel like there's very few things in the game that feels more exhilarating than just barely dodging a harpoon and trying to predict where he's going to fire. Hearing that ringing in your ear that he gets when you just aim down sights and just barely flying out of the way, especially when you get like a Trickslinger that's like really going for those crazy shots like through the boarded up windows of Shaq, and you got to think about dodging that too. It's just a really exhilarating good time. Like I love this character. I love playing as him too, but I love facing a Deathslinger. We get other characters that are like that. Pyramid Head. When a Pyramid Head is not zoning, it is literally probably one of the most exhilarating experiences in this game. Like, you are on the other side of a loop, you can barely see him because the loop's tall, and you hear that sword going to the ground, you're like like you go into, you activate, you're in, oh my gosh, I got a dodge mode, and trying to predict where he's gonna throw that, especially if they can flick, is such like a exciting thing. Of course there's the downside that, like, you know, he can't just kind of like zone and hit you, but that's not always applicable to all loops. But like, I don't know, there's something about dodging the Rites of Judgment that fills me with so much joy. It makes me so happy. This is probably, there's another character coming up which I'm sure won't surprise you, but this for a long time was my favorite character to face in the game on Survivor. Blight used to be actually really down low because of the hug tech thing, but he doesn't have hug tech anymore, so honestly I'm gonna put him over here. He's like, he's in that nurse zone of like good Blights. They end the game quickly at least and they play really intensely and the game just flies by real quick. But when a Blight is like okay or still learning, like, it's actually a really exhilarating and alright experience. But once again, it's weighed down by the super sweaty Blights that try to end the game super quickly and still play this game like baby as their family hostage. So he's right there with Nurse, and like kind of like he's so strong that like it can be kind of infuriating. But especially with the hug tech thing gone, where he can't just like smack his face against something and win the loop for free, like that being gone, I enjoy him way more. He'll go in okay. Twins. I think active dislike is a little rough. I think that's a little too mean. I don't hate them that much. They're kind of like in the C tier of these guys, where like Twins is just so strong that like Victor running, especially if they're using both of the speed add-ons, like there's just nothing you can do against Victor a lot of the time, and then a lot of the time you just end up being slugged. Like if you get like a learning Twins, like a Twins that's either mediocre or still learning, like it can be a pretty alright time. But like because Twins is like barely played as it is, you don't really run into those guys very often. You usually run into the super sweaty ones that like know how to play the character. In that case, you're getting hit by Victor no matter what you do, and you're being slugged out for forever. And if it weren't for the fact that like a mediocre Twins is an okay time, they would probably be an actively disliked, but they'll be in the bottom of rather somebody else. Trickster's just not that interesting, to be honest. We'll put him there. I feel okay. So here's the problem with Trickster is that like I know that Trickster in his current form is weaker, at least until they revert the changes. But like the counterplay of Trickster is just so uninteresting. It's just like throw pallet and hug line of sight blockers. Like that's it. Like it's very like the counterplay. I said it was somebody else earlier, but the counterplay is just so two-dimensional with this character that I just don't typically have a good time facing them. And then you have like the really like intense Tricksters who just use main event and just like mow you down at the hook. He's one of the best like hook campers in the game for that reason. It's just like there's just nothing I look forward to about facing a Trickster at all, even in its weaker form. I just don't. This is gonna be a hot take because I know a lot of Nemesis, a lot of Survivor mains especially put him like S tier, A tier. But I think a lot of that comes with like, because he's a big IP character, he gets a lot of love. and through that, I mean, a lot of newer players end up playing Nemesis and they're not too great. So Survivor main content creators can farm content off of him. But that's not my experience. This is weird. I think that's too low. I'm honestly, I'm gonna put him at the top of that's higher than I thought. I'd rather see somebody else. And I know that's a hot take. I just kind of like, I think the thing that makes me not enjoy Nemesis is we're going to get to the Xenomorph later, but Xeno has kind of a similar gameplay loop of I have a really, really strong anti-chase tool that forces you into a lot of lose-lose situations, but most of the counterplay comes down to baiting swings and predicting where the swings are coming from, which can be exciting, but also sometimes you just don't have an option because of the zombies. Sometimes you just don't have an option because there's nothing else to loop, and you're just like taking the hits. And especially since he got buffed to get that that liquor tongue hindered stuff, like I was helping a horser practice for their Nemesis showcase they did on Heads channel. So we were running like scrims, quote unquote. And I ended up in we were playing on Groaning Storehouse, and I was running in an area that only had like a path pallet and Pride Rock, and I was completely healthy, not infected, and he got 3 tentacle whips on me in short succession in like 10 seconds, and there was nothing I could do. And I was just like, how is this fun? And I generally don't get how people enjoy that. Like this character, I feel like unless they're dumb or greedy, like they just kind of get the hit no matter what. They're kind of like twins coded in that regard, that it's kind of just like you hope they're bad. Like you just hope they're bad, which thankfully a lot of Nemesis, because I said very popular character, a lot of them are bad. But I don't think hoping they're bad should be something that you should be part of enjoying a character. So I don't know. I just don't like the, either avoid the window and get hit or go into the window and get hit. And I feel like they're actually worse about that than Xeno is. Because at least Xeno, like, if you hit collision, your tail attack stops. So you can kind of like use collision to defend yourself against the Xenomorph. Where with Nemesis, his tentacle whip does not. His hitboxes don't stop when he hits collision. So he can just keep going. So he doesn't have that kind of like restraint that Xenomorph's tail has. Pinhead, I would also put that in rather someone else. Pinhead in a group, in like a four-man on comms, and you know who's rotating the box. That's pretty all right. That's a good time. I love dodging the chains and stuff. But like, if you even have one random, like, and you don't have good box rotation, like, like this character could be pain. This character is very much like this character is like a very much like a pub stopper. They're very much a pub stopping killer. They're a solo queue killer. And regardless of like, well, just only run into Swift. That's unrealistic. You can't just always run into Swift. You can't always run 4-man on comms. So realistically, this character is extremely punishing, even if you have like 1 or 2 randoms, if you're just running in a duo. So it's just realistically, they're just not as fun as a lot of other characters in the game. Artist, there's a lot of aspects of Artist's kit that just like isn't fun. Like the melee birds, I feel like are the biggest proponent. I'm gonna put her up, like biggest proponent of like why I don't enjoy facing this character, because that is one of the most unfun lose-lose situations that I get into in this game. Is that I'm gonna go to this loop. Oh, bird here, you here. So I'm just taking the hit no matter what. I guess you can try to kind of bait the birds, but as long as she's patient, she gets that hit either way. So that on top of being able to hit you like anywhere on the map, it's just kind of like it's just not fun. It's just not a good time. I don't enjoy facing artists. Like I enjoy facing artists in the sense that like when they're like a lot of these other characters, if they're mediocre or bad, it's pretty all right. But like a good artist or even moderately okay artist kind of just forces you into lose-lose situations. Sadako, I kind of like modern Sadako. It's kind of sad what happened to this character, where she kind of just got put in the grinder and just like reworked so many times she's kind of lost her identity a bit. But like current Sadako's pretty okay. I like running around, turning off the TVs, a little side quest with that. I like trying to avoid the condemned. But at the end of the day, she doesn't have any like really intense anti-loop to speak of, so you're not dealing with some BS thing that would frustrate you like with a lot of these guys down here. So it's okay. It's not like I'm like, oh my god, it's Sadako, but I'm like, oh, okay, it's Sadako. Dredge, I'm not a huge Dredge enjoyer. I know that's probably going to also upset people. I don't hate him that much. I'll go at the top of like rather somebody else. I think the main thing for me is kind of like an accessibility thing, is like Nightfall forces me to squint. I don't know what it is about it, but it's like I'm like squinting the whole time because it like hurts my eyes. And then like that gives me eye strain, which I don't enjoy. I also don't really enjoy the gameplay loop of, once again, I'm just going to put, kind of like Artist here, it's like, I'm just going to put me here and then the other guy over here and then like just force you into a bad situation. I know there's specific counterplay to that, but like if we're talking about just rogue enjoyment, just like me just entering like queuing up into a match, I see Dredge, I'm like, okay, I guess, but like I'd rather face another killer. Wesker. How about Wesker? Wesker goes to the top of okay. He realistically should be in a good time, but like I know it's because there's a lot of desync issues that play a role in this, but Wesker's hitbox just like never looks accurate. Like sometimes it is, and other times he'll like very, very clearly miss you and hit you somehow. Sometimes you'll vault the window or pallet, make it fully across, your feet touch the ground, and he will still grab you somehow. And that's like really, really frustrating. And that's the only thing that holds him back from being out of good time, because like generally, like, you know, trying to bait a Wesker into missing his bounds is actually a pretty fun and exhilarating time. It's just that like the hitbox is really wonky, especially with his desync issues. So it's just like naturally really, really frustrating to deal with that. Knight's better than they used to be, but I'll put him at the top rather somebody else. This is probably like the least offensive. I'd rather face somebody else. Because it's just like, I mean, like, that's literally the description. Like, I don't hate facing Knight. Realistically, they're like on the edge of okay, but it's just like, I'd rather face somebody else because they can still pincer, they can still do the sandwich thing, which doesn't always feel good. And a lot of the time, because of like their ability to macro pressure, Knights are very, very oppressive when they're good, which is good on them, great, but still, I'd rather face somebody else that has a little bit more interactivity in chase. So, yeah, it's like, this is probably like the bridge between these two tiers is Knight. Skull Merchant, especially current Skull Merchant. I almost want to put her in rather somebody else just because like, she's not that interesting to face anymore. We'll put her like right behind Knight. This is for completely different reasons than a lot of these guys. Like Skull Merchant just like doesn't really have an identity right now. It's almost in that Freddy zone where it was just like, what do you even do now? You know, because they just and they admitted to it, they intentionally nuked the character to put her on standby until her next rework. She's just like a big nothing burger to face, so I would rather face somebody else, not in the sense that like it's boring or I'm having a bad time. It's just like I'm not having a time at all. Singularity, also a hot take. Honestly, I'd rather face somebody else. Singularity, ever since he got his quality of life buffs, it's just like I feel like more players have hopped onto them, and especially for those characters that are players that were already good at playing him, he's extremely oppressive. He's extremely oppressive. If you face even a moderately good Singularity, he just kind of like goops you, mows you down, goops you, mows you down, goops you, mows you down. It's like, it's really like, it's intense. It's a lot. And unless you have like a coordinated team that's on top of those EMPs, he does get to just kind of like mow you down for free. Which is like, whew. It's like one of those things, like I used to really like facing Singularity a lot when he was a more difficult version of himself, but now it just feels like I see Singularity so much and they just kind of like mow down the teams I'm playing with very little ease, and I just get sick of it after a while, which is sad because like I liked playing as this killer. I used it in my main rotation for a little bit, but like playing as them, I dread seeing them, honestly. Xeno is my new favorite killer to face in the game, and I'm sure that was like not a surprise to anybody. I know this is a very, very biased pick, but this is a subjective tier list because, well, I wrote the guide on the character, so I kind of know everything you should or shouldn't be doing on this character. So counterplaying them is kind of something that comes as second nature to me because I know what this character should be going for or should not be going for. Also, obviously, a lot of the main hangups with the Xenomorph is people not knowing how to use the flame turrets, which obviously I've spent too much time trying to figure out how those things work. So I know good turret placements. I know when to do double turret setups, when to do a single turret to go across the dead zone. So like all that stuff that most people have not learned or do not want to learn, I know. So when you know that stuff, Xenomorph is actually pretty exciting. Kind of the same logic with like Deathslinger and Pyramid Head, where like just barely dodging a tail attack just feels good, especially considering how hard it is to dodge. It's just as exhilarating as like these two. So obviously, also, it's one of my favorite characters in media of all time. So like, of course I'm gonna love facing them. Chucky, I know people still hate Chucky, like a lot. I'm gonna put him at like the bottom of okay. Chucky used to be my least favorite character in the game to face, period. But that was because of Manual Scamper, which is now gone. I just hated Manual Scamper. Once Manual Scamper's gone, we're good. We're golden, right? Like, we're fine now. I know he's very oppressive in chase, but honestly, I kind of like tucking myself into corners to make a Chucky miss. Like, it just feels good. Like, trying to anticipate where his slice and dice will go and trying to dodge it feels good. Obviously, when you're out without resources, you're kind of just like dead to rights, and that does not feel good, which is why he's not going in good time. But honestly, this is weird. Honestly, I like facing Chucky a lot more now that he's like oppressive, but not just BS where he just slides on the pallet and wins for free. I actually don't mind Chucky games. I do think a lot of Chuckies are like mean, like the kind of that Wraith problem where they're just like super intense, but like otherwise, I actually like kind of like dodging and juking the slice and dice. That's kind of like a hot take. And honestly, a very welcome one because, like I said, used to be my least favorite character in the game, so that's cool. Unknown, not a huge Unknown enjoyer. Playing as and against, I know that's another hot take. People love Unknown. I mean, they're okay. I'll put them in the bottom of okay. I think that, I don't know, the Unknown has this weird situation where like when you're weakened, that like either you have the situation where you try to like run into him or move weirdly to dodge the UVX when you're weakened, and then he gets the M1. Or you don't dodge the UVX, or you don't try to dodge the UVX and you get hit by that. So he kind of has like a lose-lose situation that he can force, which can be not fun. But otherwise he's pretty okay. Like trying to dodge some of the unique UVXs they could be going for, especially if they're going for those super cool shots. Yeah, that could be a good time. I don't hate it. I just like, Unknown's been one of those characters that's just not for me, you know? Like, there's nothing objectively wrong with them at all. It's just like, I just don't like them, and I do not connect. And that's okay. Vecna's pretty okay. Yeah, Vecna's pretty all right. I have no complaints about Vecna. I know a lot of people hate facing Vecna, but I feel like it's another like the Xenomorph situations where like a lot of people don't know the counterplay. Vecna, you play more as kind of like a use it or lose it, because if you greed the pallet, he's just going to mage hand it. If you greed the window until the last second, he's just going to skeletal you as you're going through the window while you're in your locked animation. So it's like he kind of is like an anti-greed character. Like if you greed, he definitely punishes you for that. But as long as you don't greed, you're typically fine. Because like most of Vecna's spells are kind of like almost like a flowchart where like his spells are good in specific situations. So as long as you know that on the survivor end as well, you know to avoid those situations, if that makes sense. So I actually don't hate Vecna at all. Actually, I like Vecna more than I like facing modern Huntress and Bubba. Oh, he's actually gonna be at the top of okay. Like actually don't mind Vecna at all. Dracula also has that issue where like he attracts a lot of like the really like sweaty BME players, I've noticed. He's okay though, because like unless like they're like super intense and super good at the character, he's not the worst thing in the world. I think I'll put him there and okay. I think the turbo gamers definitely kind of like bring this character down a lot, because I feel like if he didn't have such a like a sweaty intense player base, I'd probably put him up at good time. But you have those people that like, you know, follow you around in bat form and just like mow you down. And I've seen, once again, what I was talking about with like Pig earlier, like, oh, I got tunneled and I'd be questioning what character probably did it. Dracula's probably up there. I've seen a lot of tunneling Draculas. But otherwise, he's a pretty okay time. I like dodging the pounds. I like dodging the Hellfire. It's just that like the bat form gets a little oppressive and kind of leaves you without a lot of options a lot of the time. So it's okay though. Houndmaster, at least in their current PTB form, which, you know, obviously that's subject to change. I think she's okay. Yeah, we'll just put it in the middle of okay, because like obviously this is not a finished character yet, but I think there's a lot of jank that makes her both awkward to play as and against, where sometimes Snug, the dog, will like go straight through you and not hit you, and sometimes it will be nowhere near you and drag you somehow. There's just a lot of jank they got to resolve about this character before they hit live. And there will probably either be more fun to face or more unfun to face, depending. But at least currently, like, she's pretty unoffensive. I feel like some of the shots people can get with Snug are pretty exciting to be on the receiving end of. So it's pretty okay. That's the word. Okay. But yeah, that's wild. I actually only have one actively dislike. That's crazy. This is like a show of growth of like a healthier mindset in the game, that I only have one active dislike and I have way more in like favorites and good time and a lot more people in okay. I'm actually like pleasantly surprised at how better my mindset is with the game, because I feel like, especially those of you who've been with the channel for a really long time, I feel like I was just like kind of like a grumpy grouch and I just complained about everything all the time. So the fact that like most of the characters are in this like middle zone instead of like, oh, they're so terrible and bad, like that's good growth. I like that. I like that a lot. But yeah, that is my active feelings, at least currently, as of recording this video, how I feel about facing all of the characters in the game. Was there any hot takes that shocked you? I know there's some that are probably really weird. Like I'm looking at Chucky all the way up here in OK and wondering where my life went. But yeah, let me know who you love to face and who you hate to face down in the comments below. Like I said, if you want to see me do the killer one to play as, let me know, because I will remake that as well. That video was like the last video I made on that was like a year ago. That's relatively more recent. Yeah, I appreciate you all for hanging out. I know this is a fairly long video, so I appreciate you staying with me. Hopefully I made your day a little bit better, a little bit of fun entertainment. But other than that, I'll see you in the next one. And if I do not, I'll see you when I see you. Goodbye.